Okay, it's now time to make the ranged enemy character. This creature will basically be moving slowly toward the player, all the while shooting black fireballs every X amount of seconds in his direction. This is the last enemy character before the final boss that we will be making in this course, but obviously you can make many more if you want. For example, you could create a bigger variation of the melee enemy character that has, for example, more health and deals more damage, but moves slowly. Or how about making a melee character that once killed spawns a smaller variation of itself? There's all kinds of unique foes you could easily make with the code already in place, so I really urge you, once having made this ranged enemy character, to try making one or two more unique enemies of your own design. So as usual, I've been going through the sketching process, doodling characters that will fit nicely in my dark game world. I want this creature to be shooting projectiles at the player from its mouth, so I'm making plenty of large-mouthed foes. Now, by drawing all these, I was able to come up with an interesting idea. How about a monster that seems to be holding its breath, resulting in swollen cheeks and a small mouth, and then when shooting, it will open its mouth nice and wide and release a deadly fireball. This will give the player a slight shock and just look pretty interesting in my opinion. So as you can see, I've sketched two faces, one where the creature is holding its breath, the other for when it opens its mouth and shoots a fireball. And so I'll just paint this character following the basic steps covered in section 1, and as usual, separate all these body parts on a new Photoshop file that I'll then export as a PNG into my Unity project. Now before rigging and animating this bat-like creature, I thought I would share with you a few basic techniques you can use if, for example, you were wanting to make your game in a more cartoony, light art style. As always, you'll start with a simple little sketch, and from there you'll have to make a new layer, and now you can select a simple hard round brush. Now you can underline your character's head in black with that brush. To get smooth black outlines, you'll have to try drawing them fast. At first this will be pretty difficult, but with practice you'll be able to do this faster and better. In the meantime, just use Ctrl Z to undo poorly drawn lines, as well as use your eraser tool. The reason I say you have to try drawing your outlines fast is because if not, you'll almost certainly end up with shaky looking lines. Okay, once you've made your thick outline, you can scale down your brush size and add little details such as thin wrinkles under the character's eyes or mouth. You can then create a new layer under this head one and use that to color your head. Now of course you can fill the head with color using the paint bucket tool, or simply do this manually. And then, just like we did for the more painterly art style, we'll define some light source and paint in shadows in the opposite direction of that light source. And with this more cartoony art style, I like painting hard shadows and highlights. But you can of course grab a soft round brush if you want, and use that instead. Once your colors and shadows complete, you can create a new layer above the color one but below the outline one, lower its opacity, and use that either to simulate the fact that there's another light source in the scene, or just to give your design a more 3D look. Then merge all those layers and there we go, you have a cartoony head complete. And then you can take the same steps for the other body parts, simply doing so on different layers. So yeah, just go with whatever art style you like best or that you enjoy making most. And then once you're done, head back into Unity and hop inside of your sprite editor to slice up the various pieces that make up your character. Then drag and drop them inside of the Unity scene, rename each body bit and tweak the order and layer of each sprite if need be. So hopefully by now you're starting to feel pretty familiar with this whole character creation process. As you know, we'll now set up the character's hierarchy, making an empty game object that I'll place at the center of my creature called ranged enemy, and then parenting all of its body parts inside of that empty game object. I'll now parent the two wings to the head so that when I move, rotate or scale the head, the wings will do the same thing. And there we go. Now as you can see, I have the head with the open mouth right here. All I'll need to do in my attack animation is swap this closed mouth head with this open mouth head, something we'll do in just a moment. So I'll start by creating the creature's fly animation, which will be playing when slowly moving towards the player. So I'll head over to my animation window and hit the Create New Animation button, saving it in a folder entitled Ranged Enemy. I'll not forget to hit the record button, and then I'll grab my creature's head and move it up slightly at around 15 milliseconds. I'll then copy and paste the first keyframes at 30 milliseconds so that the animation loops. Awesome. I'll now get these wings flapping. So I'll grab the right wing, move it down at roughly 4 milliseconds, and then copy its first keyframe and paste that at 8 milliseconds. This way the wing goes up and down. I'll do the same thing for the left wing, and then I can simply copy and paste those keyframes across the entire animation, so that these wings continuously flap with life. And that's how to make a simple fly animation. Of course, you could make your wings move more slowly, something you would do if you were animating a large dragon, for example. But since this is a weak, aggressive little creature, I'd rather make these wings fast and jittery, like an overgrown, dangerous fly. And I'll create a new animation called Attack. Here I'll hit the record button, squash my creature's head, and then stretch it, as well as change its head sprite to the open mouth one, by simply changing the sprite inside of my head sprite renderer component. And now you'll see that a keyframe has been added to my timeline handling the change in the creature's head sprite. As I'll just stretch his head for a while longer before squashing his head again and changing the head sprite back to the closed mouth version. And so with Liam, in the next videos, you'll be adding an animation event to this attack animation, which will call a function that will in turn spawn a projectile moving in the player's direction. Alright, with those two animations complete, I'll head over to the animator window and make a new animation trigger parameter called attack. And then I'll make a transition going from the creature's fly animation to his attack animation, getting this transition to only work if the attack parameter was triggered via code. I'll uncheck exit time since we don't, or at least I don't want this character necessarily completing his fly animation before performing his attack animation. And I'll get this transition to last about 0.1 seconds. And then I'll make another transition going the other way. This one will work only once the creature has played 100% of its attack animation. And again, I'll use the magic 0.1 for the transition duration. If I now head into my animation folder, you'll see that I have my animator controller here, which handles all those animation transitions, and then I have my animation clips. If I click on one, you'll see that I can uncheck loop time, which will basically stop the animation from going on and on forever. So I'll usually uncheck loop time for animations I wish to only play once, such as the attack animation of my flying creature or the summon animation of my summoner. This will just guarantee they don't play that animation twice or more when they're really supposed to play it only once. And with that said, I'll wrap up the video. We've made some great progress on our action game, having created multiple enemy characters from scratch. In the last videos of section 2, you'll be programming this last enemy as well as put into place a cool spawning system. And then I'll see you in section 3 to create and animate more weapons our player can equip and use against the game's various foes. Alright, have fun and see you soon.